Hi, I'm Richa Bansal, founder of Pink Careers and host of Fearless Career Moves podcast, a practical guide for ambitious women who are redefining success and building thriving careers and lives on their own terms. Join me as I share step by step job search strategies, leadership lessons, expert interviews, and battle tested career advice so you can ditch imposter syndrome for good and take your confidence, career, and impact to the next level. Women can indeed have it all, and I'm here to show you how. Today, we are speaking with Itishri Swain, a powerhouse marketing leader with over a decade of leadership experience across marketing agencies, ad tech, and big tech. She's led product adoption for industry leading marketing solutions, driven multi-million dollar revenue growth as the director of marketing intelligence. But what makes Itishri's story truly remarkable is how she's rewritten the script for herself. Whether it's redefining success as a first gen immigrant, taking bold, intentional career moves, and or navigating motherhood in a high performing world that still sees moms as a disadvantage on the team. In this episode, we're diving into the unspoken hustle culture among immigrants, her journey back to FANG after a break, and how women can create space for ambition without the burnout. Hi, Tishri. I'm excited to have you on board.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
Amazing. So I want to get sort of rewind a little bit. I would love to hear from you a sort of snapshot of your journey from growing up in India to now as a marketing leader. Give us a quick rundown of what that journey has looked like for you.
I think growing up in India, I had a very conventional life of going through my education in India with my parents. I did my engineering in India as well. But while going through that journey, something that kept going with me was advertising. The world of like billboards in India for Amul advertising, whether it was that or just any sort of Cadbury commercials. You can talk about commercials and I can talk about a day long. Somehow that led to this whole powerhouse feeling of like I want to do this and I want to see how that converts into a career. That probably happened a little later after my undergrad degree, and that journey led me to the states at that point 12 years ago, where I was looking to make that transition from like a very technical side of education to advertising world. Nobody in my family knew about it, so it wasn't something that I could very easily convince my dad about. So everything banked on that chance that I was trying to make on myself. I landed in the States, in Michigan. That's where I went to school for my master's in advertising. And I, again, knew nobody in the States. So it was a journey where something that consistently stayed with me was something that I needed to prove, not just myself, my parents, but also give myself a chance. I think that we often go through our lives in terms of following a certain path and making sure that we just succeed in that, whether and some it gets lost in translation about the journey itself. Are you enjoying that? And then questioning yourself, would I have wanted to do something else? I had always enjoyed XYZ and I never gave it a shot. I didn't want to be that person. Even though I had a 9 to 5 job, it was paying me well, I was making savings. There was a part of me, an inkling of thought that I wanted to try advertising. This was a fascinating side of the world that I always uh, was very candid about, like conversations. I could always glow up talking about commercials. So that was my first step of making that, like taking that chance on myself. Coming to a country where I knew no one, staying in a hostel with complete strangers, landing in this country with complete strangers who I made friends through Facebook groups before I came. And yeah, my flight got delayed in Amsterdam. I landed in the States at least midnight in a house which did not have furniture. So slept in a um, camping sleeping bag for the first night. So I still think back to that night when I called up my mom and then said, I don't know what I did. And then thinking about it, it and my mom giving me strength about, I'm sure tomorrow will look different. So that has been one of the things that has stayed with me in terms of always taking a chance and make also thinking about that there's always going to be a tomorrow, and it could always look very different from what it is today.
Amazing. I think something that you said was is so beautiful, and I want to double click on it. You talked a little bit about journey versus the destination, and where are we focusing, and especially for the immigrants listening to this episode. And I'm an immigrant, and as you kind of described your journey, at least when I think about my own kind of journey back when I was growing up in India, it's the Eastern culture, it's the virtues that we're imbibed with that focus on the outcome, focus on the outcome in terms of, like, if you do the hard work, the success will come. And I remember all through growing up K through 12, it's do the hard work and get the good marks and good results, and so that you can go to college, and then prepare for the IIT so that you can go to IIT, and then that you will be successful. And then when I was IIT, get a good job, and then you will be successful. And then you get a good job, then you're told get married, and now that is the symbol of success. And so a part of us, even though Gita says otherwise, karm kar phal ki ichha mat kar, but the other sort of like the other teachings is, which I feel is very unintentional, and that is how we've been brought up, and our parents have been brought up, that you focus on the destination, and do the hard work to focus on destination, and in that sometimes we forget the journey, and all the ups and downs of the journey is what make it so beautiful. It's like when you climb a mountain, you do the hike. If you only focus on the peak, you're gonna miss the waterfalls. You're gonna miss the flowers. And you talked
100%.
about when you landed in that empty room in the middle of the night. That is part of the journey. That's part of the story, isn't it?
100%. I always love something that my husband says, that at the end of my life, if I have to sit back and tell stories to my grandkids, I want to build those stories along the way. And if you always focus on that peak, again, you're missing those little stories that you are going to build along the way. That has been something that I've heard from him, and it stayed with me, even though unconsciously I always aimed for journeys. When I heard that sentence, it was an aha moment. It was like, yeah, that is exactly what I want to do. I want to have stories, some like untold, some which probably my close friends and family would know, some which I will build along the way and pass on to my next generation. But yeah, there has to be a story. I think the other thing which you mentioned about कर्म कर फल की चिंता मत कर, I kind of like partially resonate with that. The other part which doesn't resonate with me is that doesn't put us in a competitive stage in the world today. There is something called strategic visibility, and that goes in across our journey, whether it is a startup, whether it is a big tech, whether it is a fang, wherever you go, even like probably if you're trying to make a career in the political background today, you there is no place where you don't make a strategic visibility. You can't just focus on continuing to do the good work and let it shine. There's a piece of it, your hard work and your knowledge is going to show up, but you need to combat that by creating like a consistent narrative about how you're going through that journey as well. Make yourself that person who is able to speak about that in front of any layer of leadership, any person that you stand in front of. And that is a skill set, I feel, and that we, I feel, as immigrants are not trained on growing up. Some of us have that very innate confidence that we can speak about it, but have met a lot of like people who come from like our Eastern culture who don't feel comfortable speaking up in a meeting room, don't feel comfortable standing up on a stage and addressing, don't feel talking about their own work in front of their leadership, and they just feel that, oh, I'm doing so much work, I'm working till 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and that should just speak for itself. It doesn't actually. It has to be a very, very, like I said, a strategic combination of doing the right work and making sure that is visible on the right platform and the right mediums as well.
Yeah, I think that it's important for as we talk about the topic of this immigrants, especially struggling a lot with the hustle culture, or with this mindset that if I do the hard work, it will be recognized. I think it's important to first recognize where is this mindset coming from. And for many of the immigrants, as you had mentioned as you opened the conversation today, you talked a little bit about you wanted to give yourself a chance. right? And you wanted to do justice to this chance that your parents had enabled for you. And I feel like a large part for many immigrants, and especially many first-gen immigrants, we also want to give ourselves a chance. Like many of us have come to another country with not much to our names. Perhaps it's just like two suitcases to an empty apartment and not enough money to even buy a subway every day of the week. I remember once a week I used to have a $4 subway when I was a student here back 15 years ago, and that was a luxury,
Yeah.
right? And so part of, and we had to do like work. I was a teaching assistant and I was also doing research work and obviously doing graduate work. And so if I didn't do the hard work, it wouldn't pay for my tuition. It wouldn't pay for my living expenses. And so part, like for many, many years, I kind of took that in and believed that I have to continue doing the hard work. And to your point, at some point, we have to acknowledge that what got us here is not what's going to take us to the next step. And at
Right.
some point, you have to marry the hard work with strategic visibility
Hmm.
if you want to go to that next step. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to kind of hear from you if somebody's kind of stuck in that mindset where they're like, oh, I am doing really good work. I do hard work and I'm doing really good work. And to add another layer of complexity to it, there's something that I hear a lot from the women like I work with. If you are also on a visa, like a work visa, and you have this constant fear and pressure that if I ruffle the feathers, if I challenge the status quo, if I speak up the meetings, then I will lose my job. So, for those who may be struggling with this duality of I should continue working hard and that will be recognized, and if I speak up, I may be axed. What are some of your tips on how can we start to build the courage to build that strategic visibility for ourselves?
Um, I will be lying if I say that the visa thing is not something that looms over pretty much every immigrant that lives in this country. More so in the current environment, but it has always played a big part of like where people feel that they cannot be free or cannot actually plan anything freely for any aspect of their life. But I think something that has helped me to a certain extent, I would say along the lines, is to separate the two, to keep my career side of what I want to achieve and break it down. What would that look like in the next 5 years? And come backwards from there. Like when you say that I want to be X, a product leader, let's say, or a marketing leader, or a CMO for that matter. I remember I've had this conversation so many times that I want to be a CMO one day with multiple people so many times because I somehow want that thing to feel real to me. But again, I'm not becoming a CMO tomorrow. For that, what are like some of the strategic steps I need to know? I can't just continue to do the marketing tasks that I'm supposed to do today or learn the next measurement techniques for me to be a CMO tomorrow. Because the definition of a CMO changes. Every few years, if you assess what are the skill sets needed to be a good CMO, it changes. And every good CMO hasn't had the same path. So again, going back and recognizing that you're probably going to build your own journey and take learnings from everyone, and what are those skill sets. For me, my journey has been very unconventional, and I like it that way because I'm focusing on skill sets. Went into the agency side where a lot of it thrives on relationships. I had no background in a lot of conversations that were happening because I didn't grow up in this country. I didn't understand the jokes, I didn't understand the cultural nuances of conversations. But what I focused on was when I spoke about marketing, when I spoke about media, I knew what I was talking about. So that was a strength. And then the other piece, which I feel like is probably something I attribute my mother to a lot, is right from the beginning, she has pushed me on every stage. Even if it was storytelling, debate, or anything, I have been on platforms and stage all the time throughout my childhood. So I attribute that aspect of my confidence to my mother, that I can get up on the stage and talk about any random topic today. And I don't fear if it's 15 people or 1500. That fear somehow has gone out of my mind with just practice. Over the years it has come like that, and it started very young. So I wouldn't say that something comes out overnight, but the other piece of it is just going back from that path. If I want to be a CMO, and I want to speak about marketing really well, do I want to back it up with just pretty pictures, just branding, or just numbers? None of these single element are going to answer that question. I Even if I'm not running manual campaigns myself, if somebody asks me something about the company that I'm representing as a CMO, I should be able to speak about it very eloquently in terms of data, in terms of marketing, in terms of the branding, in terms of the content. There are so many different pieces of it. And that's what I felt like was more important in my learning path, that I focused on in every part of my journey. I did that. And sometimes I failed, and sometimes I learned from the situation, and I made a shift, because the world was also shifting along the way that I have made my journey in the last 12 years. The definition of what a measurement framework looked like 5 years ago looks very different today, given the cookieless world that we live in, and the AI led world that we are living in. It's very different. So navigating that side of challenge is what one bucket should be. The other bucket of visa, I feel like it's a fear. It is going to be there unless like you somehow are able to get into a EB1 category and are able to get through that nuance. But then I feel like what is important is to not have that fear in terms of going back to home is not bad. Like, I feel like that is something I have told myself a lot over the years. And both my husband and I are of that mentality. When we speak about home, we speak about where our parents are, where our siblings are, and that is still India. And is it going to be that bad if we lose a job and go back home and start in any of the cities over there where we grew up? There is a level of familiarity. Yes, the world has shifted. You will probably learn something. It will be uncomfortable. But then, what was comfortable about me landing here at midnight and sleeping in a sleeping bag coming from a very comfortable bed in my parents' house? Nothing, nothing at all. So, that barrier in our mind of fear is something that we build partially, I would say. I wouldn't attribute the entire thing to like the visa constraint. It's there. It's
I
very there.
think we artificially associate losing our job and going back to our hometown as us being a failure,
Yeah.
right? Or we somehow associate that if we lose our job and we have to move back to our home country, somehow we have failed ourselves
Hmm.
and our parents, and then we attach a lot of shame to it. But to your point, is it really that bad going to a place that you grew up, where you had your formative years, where the world is moving really, really fast in some of these, like in India and some of the other countries that many immigrants come in, the world is moving really, really fast. So what is really so terrible about it? And then the flip side of it, if you are on a visa and if you are on a, some sort of a work visa related constraint, what are you doing to strengthen your plan B?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like how are you
Yeah,
taking
plan B is
control?
important. Yeah.
Strengthening your plan B. So what can, and for as long, and that relates with immigration, that relates with how you're building a strong network, how are you really building that skill set that will allow you to get a job quickly. That is all part of really not putting all your eggs in the same basket of your current company, but really thinking about how am I holistically thinking about my plan B,
Yeah.
if staying in a certain country or doing a certain type of work is really important to me. And when we start to think about plan B, I think that gives us a lot of agency back and takes away a
100%.
lot of fear.
Yeah. And another thing
around-
that I talk about a lot is, or probably I felt a lot in the last 1 year, a lot more, is we associate our identities, our strengths, our everything to a job so much these days that we forget there are so many other aspects of our life that makes us us. And that is also our origin, that is also where we are from. And the qualities, the skill sets, the strengths that led us to the place that we are in. So constantly doubting ourselves in terms of that skill set is something that we do. It's an intentional practice to try to not do that. And I have done it. I will never lie that I've not done it. I've done it so many times. And over the last year I have questioned that about myself, that is it so bad? Like, I talk about how both of our families are back home, our siblings are in India. The We every time we go back, we talk about the lifestyle they have, the opportunities, the startup culture, the job situation. Everything is evolved in India. India is not a country where what it used to be like 15 years back or 20 years back. So all of that gives me a level of like confidence that if it has to be, it will be. Like, what's the worst that can happen? uh this, and when the worst is what you're assuming is to go back home, that's not worse actually. And then who is to say you're not going to lose a job in India? If you're going to associate your visa situation and the country that you're in terms of being a failure, I think that's a little short sighted. And I see how it can happen, because a lot of the people who come here also put a lot of financial burden when they come here, right? And they have responsibilities back in India, so they feel like that is a part of the journey. And I understand, I completely understand. I came here on a loan, on an education loan, which I my father repaid with me, I repaid back. But I've come a long way from there, in terms of like building a savings, making sure that I'm investing it the right way. Sure, there are that was my journey. That's not the same as everyone else's journey, but I assume that that is another aspect of it which people find very challenging when they think about suddenly packing their bags and going back home.
Absolutely. So I would love to kind of unpack a little bit about your unique journey. And you talked about you've had a very unconventional journey. And part of what really struck me was how you had a forced break in your career that you actually extended to make it an intentional break, right? And how, and again, like there's still a lot of like, especially again coming putting some cultural context to it and societal context to it. We put a lot of like pressure on people who take longer breaks for by choice or unintentionally, that longer break happens in their career. So can you talk a little bit about what that journey has been for you and why you decided to convert your forced break into a longer intentional break?
In one word, it's been probably long. Because it felt long. I have never, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the people in the industry will relate to this, that if this is the first post break that you've ever been led to, you have always worked all your life. And that was my situation. Like, since if I'm not studying, I'm not doing my undergrad or my master's, I was working. I've worked for the longest period of my life, so I have not known that life of not working, what it could look like. But the other aspect of it was, what could have looked like, what would you do with your time? I think I went through phases, because first I had to make sure that I'm not worrying about the immigrant aspect of visa in the first 60 days of the window that we always get when you are in that situation. And we came together as a family, both my husband and I, along with our family back home. I feel like everybody has been my pillar of support in that journey. And the other aspect was like, I am somebody who's very action oriented. That's my personality type. I need to have something on the books to write about. I was at my previous job for 4 years, and I had a child in the middle of that. And when you go back to work from having a child, you don't have that kind of confidence to just jump on a phone and have a conversation with someone. And I needed to have like a script about what would I say about myself. And I very intentionally joined a room full of 12, 15 strangers and hear about their stories, their challenges. Everyone has like some sort of career break or changes that they're making, and how are they navigating themselves. 6 months later, when I look back, the number of people I actually pinged very politely to ask for their time or for a 10-minute, 15-minute conversation led to a lot of thought process that evolved along the way, led to me thinking about coming back to the track of like, oh, I've always thought about skill sets. What's that skill set that I have probably like banked for a little bit, or not nurtured, or not worked on, or maybe not learned? That led me to going into AI in marketing conferences. I picked like certain conferences that were happening around me. Asked people to meet me for coffee outside of like the video space, which is again another comfort zone. Me sitting in my video call is, again, I feel is a comfort zone. I wanted to step into like a physical coffee shop, a physical conference where I will not just be faced with 12 strangers, but 12 actual people who, which is a new concept again back after from the pandemic, that a lot of people, like, I would say, are comfortable going back to, and some people are not. and don't even want to. Rather, I wanted to put myself in that situation because I wanted to have real conversations with real people in front of them, and challenge myself in that. And
Yeah, and I
that
remember like our we got introduced exactly the same way. I think you
Mhm.
were in that introspection phase 8, 9 months ago when we had our very first conversation. And if you are open to connecting with interesting people on LinkedIn, that can become the start of a beautiful relationship that can grow for years to come.
Yeah.
So that's like super interesting. And one of the other things that I kind of heard from you was you had worked all your life, right? Like you had studied, and then you came here for your masters, and then you started working, and then working and working, and we never really necessarily stop to think about what do we want to do next and why. Like more
Yeah.
importantly, like why. So what I'm hearing from you is, as you did that introspection, it allowed you to get some space to stop, like for a second, and think about the next step that I take. Which direction do I want to take it in? Why do I want to take it in that direction? What are the skill sets I want to build as I'm thinking about my longer term vision of being the CMO at a world class company, and like working backwards from them? Some like a concept that I call, you have to be the CEO of your career, right? And
Mhm.
CEOs don't always work in the business, they also have
Yeah.
to work on the business. And the
Yep.
same way, if you are the CEO of your career, you cannot always be working in your career. You have to sometimes pause and think about, how do I work on my career? As
Mhm.
in, what are the right skills I need to gain to be able to accelerate and fast
Yeah.
track to the next
Yeah.
goal or the
What's
next
that
step in
next
my career?
story? I guess I always go back to that story aspect of it. Like, what's that next story? What is it going to be like, to think about some a skill set that I learned? Like, I know about measurement pretty much like throughout my 10, 12 years, but what measurement looks like today in today's world is very different from what it was. So again, that is a challenge, that if I'm moving with time, if it is becoming a CMO, it's not tomorrow. If I have to build that plan for like 5 years later, the world is going to move extremely fast in the direction that it is, with the technology, with the different frameworks that everyone's following, the challenges. So then I guess, like, keeping yourself informed, you're not keeping that room for learning about yourself. When we are consistently just doing and doing and doing, day in and out of routine, we don't take a pause and go back and assess what is it that we're missing, and are we even learning something, or are we making space for learning something? I don't think we are
Absolutely.
able to do that a lot of times when we're in that run phase consistently.
Absolutely. I think so. For me, I would love to hear your take on taking a break and taking an intentional break, because it can come with some cost. Especially like in today's market, as companies have started to really put a bias against folks who have a longer career breaks. And I've had clients and I've had folks who've been told by recruiters, "Oh, you have a longer career break, and that's why we don't want to move forward with you." And so it comes with this unfortunate social penalty if you were to take this break, in which is absolutely necessary for you to reflect on what's the right step in your career. And so I'm curious to hear your take on, how can somebody sort of deal with the social, like this corporate penalty that comes with potentially taking a longer break, and what
Yeah,
is some of your advice for that?
I feel like I've had my ups and downs in this process, in terms of I had my high days versus my low days. There is a aspect of like you going through that process of the interview for probably n number of times. For different companies, you go through the round two, round three, you get to a point where you're going to get you think that you are doing really well. I have my sense about how an interview went is extremely strong. I always get a sense after, when I'm done with the interview and I sit back and I think about how I answered, would I have done it any differently? I give myself a score of like, I feel like this is how it went. I feel like it may convert. And I would say 90% of the times I've had that rate of like, I knew where I was, what I was missing. What I associated myself is whether I want to go to a specific company or not in this journey. I kept buckets of like, if there are certain companies who are doing really well in terms of technology, and I would like to join that team. Like, it's an exciting world to get into. Is there a challenge in a certain company that I feel like I would like to solve while building my strength there. I think I focused on those pieces, and I did not focus on like a company list.
Mhm.
And then the other aspect was I did tap on my relationships, I did tap on my networks to actually begin to have conversations, because and not all of them converted because I did not do well in interviews. A lot of them didn't convert also because along that process I realized this is not what I want to do well. Like I don't want to be in a company like this is what, realizing that you have to feel that you are a good fit to the company as much as that company is a good fit for you is very important. A lot of the times the reverse is not something that we do at all.
Yeah.
um, and the introspection part was that, I think a part which is financial, as you called out, was definitely something that we planned as a family how we would go about it. We sat down and mapped it out. And the other part about dealing with failures was something that I went through phases. I would have my ups and downs, but I convinced myself that this is a path of resilience, but I will end up in a place where I feel like I will be valued. And you will see those signs. You will see those signs in terms of the kind of responses. You will see those signs in terms of how leadership or how a senior manager or anyone who you're interviewing with actually gives you certain responses. So have really good questions when it comes to asking, like your turn of like, you do you have any questions for me is something that you'll get in a lot of interviews. And I think having really good questions for the leadership style, for, you should have a goal of like, I want to know about XYZ of this company through these questions. And will I want to go into a role like that? And that was something that I did. A couple of reasons. I have a very strong like people side of things, which I feel like I would be able to translate into the role, as well as a measurement side of things too. And some of the cultures, some of the way that the leadership responds to situations like that are above just a role. And those are the environments that you want to go back to, and not where people are considering your break as a taboo. I contemplated on going and putting that as a career break or XYZ, and then just stepped back, that if someone cared so much about it and wanted to ask me that question, I can answer that question. But that's a very good window for me to learn about, like, who is asking that question? Do I want to work for that person, or do I want to end up there?
Absolutely. I think that's a really great point that the right company is not going to make your break a problem, right? Because breaks are part of your career journey.
Yeah.
Taking an intentional break to reflect on where do you want to go next is part of your career, like overall career narrative and your career journey. Taking a break to have a child or taking an extended break to care for a young child is also part of your career narrative. I've often seen women discount, 6 months or 1 year out of their overall career journey because they think, oh, I've taken a break. And so that cannot be considered as part of my overall career experience. But why not?
Yeah.
Because that is all part of the overall career narrative. And
Yes.
so, to your point, asking the right questions of the company to understand what their company culture is,
Mhm.
and if a company is making it a problem that you've taken a break, and that is going to be a real problem to bring you forward, then that says something about the culture of the company. And this is something that I tell all my clients that for every company that rejects you for taking a break, there are 10 better companies that are willing to consider the great skill set that you had before the
Yeah.
break and also how you've potentially kept your skills current during the break.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
find those other 10 companies, stop fixating on this one potential dream company because there's nothing like a dream company. Okay,
Yeah.
find those other right companies that will work with you to build a lifelong career. So that's amazing, and that kind of like helps me segue into the last piece of conversation that I want to have with you around um, about parenthood, right? And how like you have a small child now, like a 3-year-old son, and how was that journey for you? Because for me, definitely, journey being a mom was different for me as it was for my husband. And like in all transparency, I think my husband he's a great partner, and he's for all means and purposes a 50-50 partner when it comes to actual workload and the physical workload that we have at home. And so I cook and he puts the dishes, and I take kids to have the classes and he takes kids to have the classes, and so on. And so he's that equal partner at home. But at the same time, when I think back to right after I had delivered my son, the emotional and mental sort of journey that I went through was different than what he went through as a dad, right? The postpartum journey for me and all of the emotions and the hormones and sort of I'm the primary sort of caregiver at the point where I'm the one who's breastfeeding my son to waking up at nights and the toll it takes on you while also going back to work. And at the time I was also working on some personal projects, including working on my green card and all of that. Really like wanted a different journey for me than it was for the father. And
Yeah.
so I'm curious to kind of hear your take on what that journey has been like for you.
Yeah, I think it is a very heavy topic. I feel like we could have a whole session on just talking about parenthood, and especially working parents too. Like different challenges. I wouldn't say that stay at home parents don't have their own set of challenges. I think I can speak to working parent challenges because I've been in that shoe. Definitely started off with the sense of like when you go back, there's just this difference in like how a woman is perceived back into the job versus a man is. And that is something that I firsthand saw with my husband. Like we both worked in the same company, and nothing to say about the culture of that. It's just a conditioned behavior. I feel like people already think that even if you are like a very involved partner, there is an assumption always that you are not as stressed about being a new parent as a mom is. So that's one part of it. So when they have go back to work, nobody is creating like a space for them to come back peacefully. It was sudden for him. Like when he went back, it was just within a span of a week. He had like a new product launch plan to build, and there was consistent breaks that he was taking. And between that and also being a full-time involved father, I felt a lot of like stress on like showing up on his face, on his like hair and his body language, a lot of it. Like sleepless nights, I wouldn't say that in the first 2 or 3 months I've had more sleepless nights than him, because that was something that we both managed really well. And he was extremely on like what you would call on your front foot in terms of like waking up in the middle of the night to feed him, because I could get like good 5 hours of sleep at night. I would pump and then he would be able to take care of him at night. We were very, very particular about that. If we want to get help in the first month or two while we were gathering ourselves or learning how to do like very little things that we were very scared of in the beginning of being a new parent, we made sure that we had help with that. The other aspect of it is there are going to be certain emotions, the hormonal changes that a woman goes through, a man doesn't. But there might be like different hormonal changes that men go through. We don't know about, nobody talks about it. I don't know how much research is there for that. But the post mat leave, we go through a huge period of like adjustment with hormonal changes, and we have mood swings, we have a lot of like doubt that we have about ourselves, and we go through that phase. And it's a very different journey. I have led a lot of research about that, ranging from like good 6 months to like even like good 3-4 years of a woman's life, where before they start feeling themselves in their own bodies. And in that period you are not yourself, 100% yourself, and you react to certain things different way. And your partner doesn't necessarily understand it. And we argued or discussed that at length for a lot of times. I think the biggest thing about parenthood that we learned is even the other partner goes through a significant amount of change in their life. They could just pick up their bags and leave the house and go for a drink with a friend or a movie or a weekend trip as much as we could before, and they can't do that right now too. Everything is like a conversation, everything is like a pre-planning. So there's a lot of changes and shifts in that which we don't realize. And the other piece, I think, Richa, which I learned along the way, I used to always think about this, that oh, we should have 50-50 partnership. But I evolved from that situation thinking that it can't be actually 50-50 on a daily basis also a lot of the times, which is where we focused on saying that if either of us are left alone with the child, we should know what to do with him in and out. And that's what it is. And when we both are working, there are going to be days when he's on a 40 and I'm on a 60, or I'm on a 20 and he's on a 80, and we are able to support each other with that. I think
Like
that
today,
is
for
my
example,
very
like today, for example, I'm on 100, right? I've been in meetings all day morning. It's 11, 10:30 in the night for me. And my husband is totally like fully taking care of the kids today. And, like I think I really like love what you talked about, and something that I didn't even think about before you brought it up today, that your partner also goes through all of these changes, right? Their life has also been turned upside down. And as the woman in the relationship, how can we understand that and support our partner through it? How can we support the dad through it so they can show up stronger for the mom?
yeah,
Because,
100%.
we're working with partnership, right? So, as we're going through all the changes that that the dad cannot understand, how can we show up for the dad so they
Yep.
can show up stronger for us?
100%. I think it's a partnership. The moment you call it a partnership, live that partnership. It can't be a swing which is always leaning towards you. There will be days like that, but it goes the other way too. Like, I've seen him go through medical changes that he was like, oh, I never had this before, and I want to, I don't know what's happening. And it is purely because of like a change, a stress, something that lingers. You're constantly worried about your child, you're constantly thinking about things. And he is his dad, and he definitely is present right from day one, from the moment zero. So he definitely has a lot of like those emotions which we as women have a hard time. I think in the first few months, I feel like it is very hard to separate ourselves from our own feelings and hormones, because there's so much going on in our physical world itself, that we are trying to figure out. There is a third person in both of our lives that was not present before, that we both need to take care of, and there's no break. That's
Yeah,
another thing. There's no
there's no
off day.
break. It's back to the hustle culture that we were talking about in the beginning.
It's okay.
um,
There's no off day.
Absolutely. Itishi, you are truly a powerhouse. I mean, from everything we talked about in terms of how do you sort of manage that hustle culture and start to shift into making more strategic shifts in our career, to how do you start owning your own story, whether you have the pressure of immigration, whether you have the pressure of your cultural contexts, whatever that case may be. How do you start owning that narrative for yourself? How do you start to be show up as a power couple in parenthood where you're both supporting each other? I think your journey is really the story of resilience and power through and through, and agency. I think agency is the word that keeps coming back to me. We all
I
define
feel
our
the
stories, right? We
story
all
of
are.
resilience is like an immigrant story, always an immigrant story. I feel like that is a title of a movie. An immigrant's life is a resilient life. That's what it
Absolutely.
is. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Itishri, if you want to leave the listeners with one piece of advice on how can they define their own resilient story, how can they become the CEO of their careers, what would that be?
I think be just focus on how you want to be, or what you want to be in the next 5 years and 10 years. Begin with that, because everything starts with you, and that is something also that I have, like, I am still going through that journey. I am going through that discovery every day. I intentionally want to think about that. How do I show up better? And that translates to every part of my life. Like, that goes to how I show up for my son, how I show up for my partner, how I show up for my parents, how I show up at work. And again, the other piece is realizing that work is a component of our life. It's not all of our life. It
Not
doesn't
all.
define all of our entire. I baked like 12 or 14 cakes in the last year for all of my friends, and I enjoyed it. I did not know I would even enjoy baking a cake, but it was so therapeutic for me, because that was the moment when I would think about a million other things in my mind, and that was just mine. That was my
Yeah,
time. So
absolutely.
it's very important to start with you. Start your story, start your journey, everything with you. And it may sound selfish, but you can only give others when your own cup is full.
You have to put your mask on first before you can put the mask on anybody
100%,
else.
always that.
It
Yeah.
starts with you, it ends with you. It is such a wonderful conversation, Nitishri. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and part of your journey with the listeners. And again, for each one of you listening, it starts with you. It always starts with you. Your story, your journey always starts with you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Nitishri.
Thank you, Richa. Thank you for inviting me. This was an amazing conversation. I'm sure, continue talking to you about a lot of other topics that we candidly share and talk about. But loved being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. If you loved today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback really helps us get this podcast in the hands of other amazing, high achieving women so they can also build careers they love on their own terms. And if you are ready to take your career to the next level, check out the Fearless Hire, our signature career accelerator for ambitious women ready to step into high impact leadership roles. You can learn more at www.pinkcareers.com. Until next time, stay fearless.